done it at last. I've destroyed Spider-Man, finally beyond any doubt. Welcome back and welcome to Season 3, Episode 3 of Me and My Friend Pete. Another Donuts and Dimes production. This is the Amazing Spider-Man podcast highlighting all things the Amazing Spider-Man comic book series. I am the voice of viability for the golden liability. His mama named him Gerald. And before we dive in, you know we trying to make the donuts and you can't do that on dime, so it's time for the shameless plug. We implore you to become a patron over at patreon.com/HSPP. You can sign up as a free member, which really helps us out, or as a Key Keeper or High Council member. Key Keepers in the High Council get exclusive access to our Season 3 bonus episodes chosen by, well, the patrons. Power to the patrons. Our last bonus episode saw the spoilers return to the DC universe and two tales that make damn sure we know she's back and better than ever. Want to listen? Gotta sign up at patreon.com/HSPP. This has been another shameless plug. That's out of the way, the annual's out of the way, so we're back in standard Amazing Spider-Man continuity. We've got Aunt May subletting, we've got Harry being shady, we've got MJ and Gwen throwing more sexual innuendo than Michael Scott when Ryan Howard's around. We've got the return of the Foolsville faithful General Flash Thompson, and you know he's got a bone to pick with the Goldenrod Kid, Pete Parker. And if that ain't enough, we've got the return of the one-man hands team, 008, Dr. Otto Octavius, better known the world over as Dr. Octopus. And we've got me, we've got you, we've got, no further ado, we've got the Amazing Spider-Man number 53, Enter Dr. Octopus. Let's swing!
Me and my best friend Pete, old adventures, new critiques. He spins webs, I spin yarns, kinda kooky, be forewarned. Look out, it's me and my friend Pete.
The credits. This issue was written by Smiling Stan Lee with art by Jazzy John Romita, that's the senior, with Mickey DeMeo embellishing on inks and Artie, it's in the name Simek, on letters. The cover date of this issue is October 1967. The cover. The cover of this one has the Amazing Spider-Man and Spidey New Roman in bluish purple with Spidey costume red shading atop spiderwebs as usual. And this cover is classic in the way that I love. The city of New York colored a faded yellow stretches out before us in the background, while in the foreground we get two large gray skyscrapers, one stage left running the length of the page, the second rising stage right, stopping a quarter of the length of the page. I love the covers that put the focus and color on Spidey and whatever villain he's shooting 5 with, and this one is doing it right. Being pulled off of the stage left skyscraper, upside down, suited and booted, his body scrunched in a seated position, the King of Swing. In his sky-high rear end, we get a yellow and white arrow caption box pointing down, the font inside large and red. Look who's back. And who indeed. On the shortened skyscraper, we see the husky Dr. Octopus in a classic one-man hands team pose. You know that's both his fists raised above his head, his biological arms doing nothing to further his cause. You know that's full green bodysuit minus the gloves. You know that's Kanye shades wrapping his eyes. You know that's brown-haired bowl haircut. And you know that's 4 mechanical arms working. If you recall, we have L1 and L2. Those are the arms running along the left side of the good doctor's torso. And R1 and R2 running along the right. L2's knocked Spidey off the wall of the stage left skyscraper, leaving fractures in the stone in its wake. L1's wrapped around our hero's waist, pulling him from the wall. R1's grabbed Spidey's left ankle. R2's grabbed Spidey's right wrist. And the motion lines around the King of Swing let us know Doc Ock is shaking him like a rag doll. Motion creates emotion, they say, so let's get into it. Page 1 opens to the Amazing Spider-Man in a goldenrod caption box. Beneath this, we get the title of this issue, Enter Dr. Octopus. And beneath this, high above the city we know and love, sitting comfortably in a web hammock of his own design, suited and booted with a backpack also made of webbing on his back, reading a Daily Bugle, is the golden liability, Spider-Man. I think this is the first appearance of the webbing backpack and has unlocked a core memory that makes me think of one of my favorite toys I owned as a kid, Toy Biz's 1995 Battle Ravaged Spider-Man action figure, based off the animated series. It came with a webbing backpack, it came with a camera, a little Spidey pen, and Spidey, of course, his mask ripped, huge chunks of his costume torn out of his chest and arms, a tuft of his hair poking from the top of his mask, and apropos, one of Doc Ock's metal arms, I imagine ripped from his torso by our hero in a bloody turn of events. I bought it from a toy store called Tanya's that sold everything from Yu-Gi-Oh cards to do-rags. The cover of the Daily Bugle shows headshots of two men. One, owner and publisher of the Daily Bugle, a bushy-eyed-browed and mustached J. Jonah Jameson. The other, a smiling, recently deceased Frederick Foswell. And as promised in issue 52, Jameson gave Foswell all the credit. Sorta. The large print reads, J. Jonah Jameson and Fred Foswell, heroes in case of Spider-Man and the Kingpin. Foswell loses life. Jameson split the credit with Foswell 50-50 and worded it to seem like Spidey was working with the Kingpin. And our hero ain't happy about it.
Well, it figures. I did all the work, and Jolly Jonah writes the story as if he's the hero, and I'm the heavy. It's things like this that make a fellow want to cancel his subscription.
Oh, I never mentioned where exactly he was high above the city. Namely, 39th Street, 2nd Avenue, Midtown, limestone building. You can't miss it. On the top 3 floors, people are leaning out of their windows, pointing and smiling at our hero. And you gotta know, the Daily Bugle may pump hatred about Spidey out to the masses, but more than once, he's fought off villains inside the building and saved many of the people who are probably ogling him right now, so they don't share Jameson's sentiment. And speaking of Jameson, you know he's half his body outside of his window, white dress shirt on, black tie, silver tie clip, green slacks, right fist shaking towards our hero in anger.
Spider-Man, get out of here, you web-swinging weasel! All my employees are so busy gawking at you that they're not getting any work done. Don't just dangle there, you phony fink. Say something.
We turn the page. On 2, Spidey follows Jameson's advice, hopping out of his hammock and web swinging towards the miserable magnate, throwing his finished copy of the Bugle at the bewildered cigar-chomping Jameson, who throws both hands up in fear as Spidey lets him have it.
Don't get your gums in an uproar, melonhead. I was just reading your column to get my laugh for the day. Where do you get the nerve to call your rag a newspaper? Who's been writing your stuff these days? The Brothers Grimm?
Web swinging away, he continues.
Anyone who pays a dime for that scandal sheet ought to get 11 cents change.
Watching
More
Spidey
than they
leave,
paid,
Jameson finds that bowl of tough he was eating and goes right back to fist wagging, shouting that he's going to see the fouled up freak behind bars.
Yeah, when I come to visit you at feeding time in the monkey house.
Spidey web swings through the city in the gutter between panels and sits on the ledge of a building, his head down, fingers interlocking in front of a massive clock face. So you know I'm thinking he's at the Metropolitan Life Insurance Company Tower.
Quoted from Wikipedia.
The Metropolitan Life Insurance Company Tower, colloquially known as the MetLife Tower and also as the South Building, is a skyscraper occupying a full block in the Flatiron district of Manhattan in New York City. The building is composed of 2 sections, a 700-foot tall, that's 210 meters, tower at the northwest corner of the block at Madison Avenue and 24th Street, and a shorter east wing occupying the remainder of the block bounded by Madison Avenue, Park Avenue South, 23rd Street, and 24th Street. The South Building, along with the North Building directly across 24th Street, comprises the Metropolitan Home Office Complex, which originally served as the headquarters of the Metropolitan Life Insurance Company, now publicly known as MetLife. And the clock Spidey's sitting in front of, well, the clocks are historic in their own right. Namely, a clock face is centered on all 4 sides of the tower from the 25th through 27th floors. Each clock face is 26.5 feet, that's 8.1 meters, in diameter, while the numerals on the clock faces are 4 feet, 1.2 meters tall. The numerals and minute markers on the clock faces are edged with copper, while the minute and hour hands are made of iron with a copper sheathing. The minute hands weigh 1,000 pounds, that's 450 kilograms, and are 17 feet, that's 5.2 meters long, while the hour hands weigh 700 pounds, that's 320 kilograms, and are 13.33 feet, that's 4.06 meters long. The mechanism was controlled by electricity, a novelty upon the tower's completion. The master clock, which controlled the large clock faces as well as 100 other clocks in the same complex, was located on the first floor of the former home office and ran with a maximum error of 5 seconds per month. The clock faces were the largest in the world upon their completion. Clock faces are made of reinforced concrete. Blue glazed tiles run along the circumference of each face. In addition, there is a tiled corona at the center of each face. The clock faces contain ornamentation by Pierre Lebrun of Napoleon Lebrun and Sons. These include dolphins and shells on the spandrels at each face's corner, as well as marble wreaths with fruit and flower motifs on the faces themselves.
Thanks, Wikipedia!
Back to Spidey's in his feelings. He starts his usual diatribe about making Jameson pay before admitting to himself that all he's going to do is grin and bear it, that the miserable magnate can't be as bad as he seems. Before the large clock strikes 9 a.m. right in his ears, and he tumbles from the ledge, his hands covering his head. He shoots a web line easily to stop his descent in the last panel on the page.
But this reminds me, I'm doing class soon. Lucky I'm carrying my sillies in my web sling. There's no time to go home and change.
And this is why I think Spidey's at the MetLife Tower. He's got to go to the East Village or Washington Square Park, depending on who you ask to get to ESU, Marvel's equivalent of NYU to be sure. And
shout out to the home team! Swift seconds later, a somewhat spellbinding swinger soars above the campus at good old ESU.
Your Honor, I rest my case. Spidey web swings onto the scene, spotting Flash fashion on dress Blues Thompson. The kid's got some stripes on his chest, so he's been putting the work in over in Vietnam. And he's hanging with the heartthrob Gwen Stacy, whose style is as flawless as you'd expect. Plaid green skirt and jacket combo, black t-shirt, gray stockings, and a pink trendy oversized baseball hat with matching bow on the front, covering her platinum blonde shoulder-length hair. Of course, Flash looks up and spots his hero.
Wow, this is our lucky day! There's Spidey!
While Spidey swings by, Gwen asks if the man really is Spidey's #1 fan.
You can say that again, gorgeous. That Masked Marvel is one Joe I'll take my hat off to any day.
Ironically, he doesn't take the hat off. Gwen continues, making a fair point, saying how can Flash know Spidey isn't someone Flash would dislike under the mask. Flash says there's no possible way before spotting Harry nose in the air Osborn, black cashmere sweater so you know it's soft, white collared shirt beneath it, brown slacks, waves on Typhoon, and he's not happy.
Hi, anyone seen Pete Parker? I'm getting sick of being his social secretary. All I do is take messages for him because he's never around.
He'll never change. Once an itch, always an itch. Right, Gwen?
But Gwen doesn't agree.
Don't ask me, gents. I'd rather itch than scratch.
Sounds like she wants Parker to be her, you can say it, bedbug.
And as our puzzled private tries to figure that one out,
Spidey pulls a screen roof panel from the ceiling and creeps into the ESU gymnasium, hoping to quick change without being spotted. On 4, safe from prying eyes on the catwalk, he opens his makeshift duffel bag and pulls his clothes from inside. Tucking his gloves and mask into the waistband of his costume, he gets changed into a white dress shirt, a woolly goldenrod yellow sweater, olive slacks, socks, and brown loafers, and leaps off the catwalk onto the climbing ropes. Man, I miss a good climbing rope, but I imagine a sometimes 30-foot high rope being climbed by kids in a gymnasium was an accident waiting to happen, and often did. I never saw anybody get injured on one, but as the great Jim Rummy once said, the absence of evidence is not the evidence of absence. Either way, Pete's on the rope.
Phew! Another second would have been too late. It's Professor Warren.
And Professor Miles Warren, brother to Pete's high school science teacher Raymond Warren, enters the gym. Slim white dude, hair combed back, early 40s by the looks of him, half-rimmed glasses. We've seen him before. He's in a black suit, green striped tie, and that always present lab coat. Pete reaches the bottom of the rope, stuttering out an excuse for why he was on it.
I was just taking a little workout, sir.
And Warren? The man realizes what we've known all along.
I never realized you were so agile, son.
The most agile. Agility on a Kobe 80 piece. Translation? Best ever. He spots the mask hanging from the back of Pete's pants and tells the kid to tuck in his undershirt. Pete, a look of panic, thanks the man's nearsightedness for not spotting the web pattern on the mask as he tucks it into his pants. But Warren's wearing glasses. I don't think Pete understands how they work anymore. He hasn't worn them for years now. Warren puts his mind at ease though. He says no one's been expelled for a protruding undershirt, and with a quizzical look on his face, continues.
By the way, Parker, I have 2 extra tickets to tonight's science exposition. So if you and a friend would like to be my guest.
That's great, Professor. I've been wanting to go.
Pete turns to leave smiling, thinking.
What a relief. He doesn't suspect a thing.
But if you know the history like I know the history, he shouldn't be too relieved just yet. He turns a corner and runs right into the heartthrob who hits him with a tongue twister.
Say, aren't you the one who picked a peck of pickled peppers?
Peter Parker, picking pecks of pickled peppers.
Pete, a +1 on unanswered, asks if Gwen's doing anything special tonight.
Everything I do is special, Mr. Parker.
On 5, Pete spots Harry and says hello, but the kid's giving a shoulder colder than January in the city. He says hi, tells Gwen Flash will look for her after class, and spins off. No time for small talk. When Pete asks what crawled into his waves and drowned, Gwen puts him on game.
Your unexplained comings and goings seem to be shaking him up, laddie. But greedy Gwendolyn is more interested in what you had in mind for tonight.
It's the Science Expo. Maybe it's not your cup of tea, but...
Gwen calls him a silly boy and reminds him she's a science major too. How you forget this woman's brain probably bigger than yours, fella? Y'all both eggheads. Respectfully.
Sometime later, after class.
Warren, finding out Pete's bringing Gwen, compliments him on his choice, and telling the two there's no time to change, goes to get his car. Outside, we find Flash and Harry shooting a breeze. Flash, spotting Gwen, breaks into a smile, asking if the woman's ready to go to the disco. But she says she can't. She's got a date with Pete Parker tonight. Flash closes the space between them in the gutter, and I'm sure he's Liz Allen flashback triggered. He gets hats a pompadour with Pete in the next panel, shouting in his face like old times.
Listen, civilian, are you trying to beat my time with Gwen?
You never had any time to beat. And what's with the civilian bit? Where were you before the draft?
Some beasts die hard. But Pete's got a point. If anyone else snapped and asked that, I throw a flag on the play, but Pete's been shot at, burned, gassed, electrocuted, tossed from the sky, caged, almost mauled by leopards, transported to other dimensions, has secret bases fall in on him. People have tried to drown him. He's been blown out of a penthouse by Dr. Doom, and let's not forget Pimp slapped with the strong hand by 008. So if anybody's got a right to go chest to chest with the General of Foolsville, it's the Goldenrod Kid. Gwen gets between the two, putting a hand on Flash's chest, and Pete turns. Gwen says they'll all meet at the coffee bean later and puff a purple peace pipe. Privileged alliteration going crazy. Pete, still simmering, says,
Okay, but one of these days that loudmouth will pick on the wrong guy. Yeah, and that's when I'll flatten you, Parker, because you were born the wrong guy.
Pete thinks the usual, that this guy can't be Spidey's biggest fan, before telling Gwen, let's go. The two walk off arm in arm, leaving Flash and Harry alone to talk.
I never could understand why he bugged you, Flash, but now I can't explain it. But he acts like he's in his own private world, and everyone else better keep out.
Oh, he's okay, Harry.
What?
Sure, nothing wrong with him that a good left to the Labanza couldn't cure.
Man wants to hit him in the Labanza. That's slang for the stomach, possibly from the Sicilian word of the same name, which means any large, rounded, liquid container. Now I'm thinking Flash is an Italian-American. I don't hate it.
Shout out to Luigi. Minutes later, in Professor Warren's car.
This must be one of those old school 3-person front seat jalopies because 6 opens to Gwen, Pete, and Warren on their way to the exhibit, all in the front seat, Pete wondering what the science exhibit will be putting on display. But Gwen's in the know. She says it'll be a new type of missile defense called a nullifier. When Warren asks how it works, Gwen says it's in the name. Missiles get fired and the homing devices of those missiles get nullified, throwing them off course. Warren says she's right. Walking through the exhibit hall, past military personnel standing at attention, and fellow scientists reading published articles plastered on the wall, Warren continues.
Today there'll be a demonstration of the nullifier stabilizer control. For maximum security, the 2 parts of the stabilizer will be delivered separately.
Gwen says it sounds like the start of a James Bond film. Pete agrees, but the girl doesn't know he's boned. Chemical boned. If he's in a building, chances are cosmic and comic timing are going to have him getting into some action. He's not worried about that though. He's got other things on his mind. Namely,
But the most exciting part is just being with Gwen. How can anyone so beautiful also be so... Something's wrong. My spider sense is starting to tingle.
never a dull moment. As Warren babbles on about finding their seats and how the way this nullifier works connects to all the theories they've been learning in class, Gwen glances back at Pete and notices the way his smile has shifted into a scowl. She says he looks strange, asks if everything's alright. But Pete, his head whipping back and forth, is lost in his thoughts.
It's tingling more than ever now. But how? Why? I don't see anything happening, and there are guards all over the place.
Finally answering Gwen, he says he's fine, that he thought he saw someone he recognized. Gwen says whoever it was must have been a ghost. Warren, oblivious to what's happening behind him, says they should get seated. They enter the conference room and make their way to their seats, while on the stage, a scientist and MP are putting together the 2 parts of the large purple nullifier. It kind of looks like a Ghostbusters proton pack without the cannon, and it's laid on its side, for the record, to give you kind of a visual, but Pete's still looking over his shoulder, still lost in his head.
There must be some danger to the nullifier, but I just can't slip away and become Spider-Man, not without arousing too many suspicions.
While on stage, the scientist is getting science-y.
Ladies and gentlemen, with both parts of the stabilizer safely on the platform, I shall join them together so that our demonstration can begin. Obviously, we have taken every precaution for maximum security with this vital device.
A balding thick boy in an olive suit and lab coat, he opens 7 on stage beside the nullifier, doing his best Ultimate Showman impersonation. His right hand waves at the picture of the massive rocket blowing smoke as it takes off on the screen behind him, his left palm up towards the audience. He shouts,
"To begin our demonstration, we now project a simulated missile attack upon this screen behind me. This is the first time these Defense Department films have been declassified for public viewing, and it will be the last time."
As the rocket shoots towards parts unknown, the scientist, confused at the disruption, asks the obvious question. Who said that? We and Pete, Spidey screaming in his head, watch as a man in a flowing 3/4 length green cloak and bowl haircut rises to his feet in front of us, to the shocked astonishment of the crowd. From this angle, we can just make out his silver-framed Kanye shades. He continues.
I did. I, the only one on Earth powerful enough to seize your nullifier, despite anything you can do. That voice, it can belong to only one man. Stand aside, you helpless, bumbling fools. No one can stem the matchless attack of Dr. Octopus.
He raises his human arms, throwing back his cloak, and his mechanical limbs get to work. L1 lifts the screaming presenter from his feet as he yells,
Guards! Guards! Stop him! Fire! Before it's too late!
And chaos ensues. People are scattering, climbing over seats, knocking each other over in a mad dash for the doors. Pete, both fists clenched, thinks,
I was right. It's him. He's after our greatest weapon.
oh, he just said this is not a weapon, Pete. Pay attention. This is something to stop weapons. But he stands helpless as the metal arms move into high gear. L2 lifts the nullifier from the podium while military police pull guns, letting the presenter know they can't just fire. There are too many people around, but damned if they won't get the tear gas. R1 swings from stage right to stage left as a dude in a brown suit shouts,
He'll never get away with it. He's mad to even think he...
before being smacked backwards. He's sent flying over a man in a burgundy suit who's already unconscious. The arm continues past the man in brown and clips the knee of an MP, who screams in pain, while R2 knocks a dude in a blue suit and red tie off to the side effortlessly. The good doctor is back in a cape to boot and green boots to boot. Now that we're looking, we turn the page and we're on
The Infinity page.
Page 8. Just in time to witness sheer panic. People breaking towards the door. Warren and Gwen almost side by side, being pushed and pulled by the tide as Dr. Octopus lets his arms swing past his knees, above his shoulders, every which way. Warren shouts for Gwen and Pete to follow him. Gwen shouts, Peter, I thought he was with you. While Peter, beside a man with sheer terror on his face, races forward, away from the danger.
I've got to slip away and change to Spider-Man.
All the while, Doc Ock shouts,
Run, you helpless weaklings, run!
in this our
Panel of the Week.
as one guy sprints past in his Pee Wee Herman best and another shouts,
Run! They're using tear gas!
Pete spins off to the men's room. Meanwhile, back in the exhibit hall, broken folding chairs littering the floor, Doc Ock, holding his newly stolen nullifier in both hands, sets his feet and sends his tentacles to deal with the 4 military police who've just entered the room shouting, This'll stop them! While letting off rounds of tear gas. When 008 shouts that tear gas can't stop the most dangerous man alive, the MP in charge replies, as long as the man breathes, they've got him. And Doc Ock ain't wearing a mask.
Dr. Octopus needs no gas mask. My all-purpose arms can do anything.
The MPs, still holding smoking launchers looking on, Dr. Octopus's arms begin to spin.
Just watch.
On 9, we find a gorgeous panel of Dr. Octopus, tentacles in full propeller mode, forcing the tear gas towards the ceiling, and you know he's monologuing crazy.
Ha! What good is tear gas when I can instantly blow it away by merely spinning my metal arms around me like 4 unstoppable living propellers? So great is the air pressure that it even scatters my erstwhile enemies, toppling them clumsily to the floor.
His arms whip around the room, working. R1 disarming an MP, R2 clipping a red-headed MP's side, L2 lifting an MP by their collar as he continues gloating.
And now that you are all at the tender mercy of the world's most unbeatable human. But no! You're lying in your teeth, Grapefruit Head. I beat you before, and I can do it again.
And the King of Swing lives up to his name. Webline in both hands, he's on the scene, feet together, racing above the ducking MPs, aiming at a bewildered octopus who asks, where did Spidey come from? How did he get here?
And we got action.
10 opens to Spidey, kicking off of 008's face with both feet, quipping the whole time.
Don't be telling, Pie Face. Let's just say your fairy godmother thought you'd be lonely, so she conjured me up.
His momentum beneath him, he bounces toward the ceiling, still taunting Dr. Octopus.
Say, don't you have sense enough to stay down when I whoop you? Oh, I get it. You're bracing yourself with 2 of your nutty tentacles, eh? Pretty clever.
Back on his haunches, L2 and R2 stopping him from falling over, Octopus shouts he doesn't need to drop the nullifier to finish Spidey off. But of course he doesn't. The man hasn't used his biological hands in a fight since he pimp slapped Spidey way back in AFSM number 5. L2 and R2 planted on the floor beneath him, he goes full-on Stiltman, using the hydraulics in the arms to rise towards the ceiling to meet our hero. To be fair, the two haven't fought in over 20 issues, so it makes sense that Spidey's caught off guard when Doc Ock is suddenly face-to-face with him. And now in striking distance, Octopus's arms,
they can brush you from the ceiling as effortlessly as they clear the room of any annoying insect. But this time, I will not allow you to escape alive.
And with a violent swing of R2, he lashes out at Spidey, knocking our hero not only from the ceiling, but out of a nearby window. On 11, the villain, still gripping his loot with both hands, follows Spider-Man out of the window where he finds our hero perched on the sheer wall of the building beneath him.
So, you saved yourself by clinging to the outside wall, did you? Ha! But not for long. Now that I have no further use for concealment, I can dispose of my cloak, as I intend to dispose of you.
Capes and caution to the wind. He says all this, and instead of climbing down to meet Spidey, he climbs up towards the roof of the building. Our hero, hot on his tail.
Boy, I never heard anyone yak so much. How do you intend to beat me? By talking me to death? Anyway, in case I forgot to tell you, I'm not heading for the ground.
In the gutter between the second panel and the final one on page, Spidey's made a giant leap towards the retreating Dr. Octopus and managed to grab hold of the whipping R1 arm, shouting,
"But you are, Sonny. I was just waiting until you got within reach. And now away we go."
But Octopus is unbothered. He says Spidey still doesn't realize that he holds all the aces.
Meanwhile, among the many spellbound spectators on the ground, we find
12 opens to Gwen Stacy outside, ground level, looking around for Pete, thinking,
there's no sign of Peter anywhere. I don't understand it. What could have happened to him? I can't help feeling that he's in some sort of danger.
Danger is an understatement. Spidey's gripping R1 being whipped around like a rag doll high above them over the rooftop of the exhibit hall. Gwen, all you gotta do is look up.
Talk about female intuition. Gorgeous Gwen just couldn't be righter.
But the turntables spin, and Spidey goes in. As R1 whips him into the air, Spidey releases his grip, and as he descends, both arms wide, he takes aim with his left web shooter, shouting,
"Heads up, Doc! You figured you'd have the advantage here on the roof, because you could stand on your feet and use all four arms for fighting, eh? Well, you can't hit what you can't see, and you won't see me while your goggles are covered with web fluid."
How did he fit all of this trash talk into... He must have fallen half of a second, and he was just going, rambling. Love this for him. Does Spidey get the hit? Of course he gets the hit, plastering Oc's glasses to his face and forehead. I gotta give Octopus credit. He isn't showing signs of being frazzled at all. Sure, he's made L1 take the nullifier from his real hands and is using them to pull the webbing from his eyes, unsuccessfully of course, but he formulates a plan on the spot, a plan the Spider's gotten hit to.
The nullifier! You're dangling it over the street below. If I drop it, dozens will be crushed, so you can't even follow up your small victory, not while innocent people need your protection. He's right. I can't let that fall. Nor can I run off without planting my Spidey tracer.
And he does. Taking advantage of the blinded Octopus's struggle to see, he plants a tracer on the man's left hip, a moment before Octopus releases the nullifier above the city.
He meant it. That madman let it go. And the street is packed with onlookers directly below us.
And a moment later, in the gutter between pages, Spidey's dived headfirst, sprayed a web line onto the rooftop, and we find him on 13, gripping his webbing with his right hand between his legs and spraying a line with his left hand toward the falling nullifier. Does Spidey get the hit?
Got it!
Of course he gets the hit. 2 for 2, our hero batting 1,000, saving countless onlookers from assured nullification on the street below.
While on the rooftop above,
Dr. Octopus realizes he's not going to get the webbing off his face, nor can he remain out in the open, so he does the only thing he can.
If I use my tentacles as feelers, I can still make my way to safety, so long as I keep my sense of direction.
And he does, moving from rooftop to rooftop, slowly and carefully away from the scene.
And as the multi-armed menace feels his way into the all-concealing shadows of night,
Spidey, clinging to a sheer wall above the crowd, lowers the nullifier towards MPs who are rushing up, ready to take it off his hands. Nullifier back in its proper hands, Spidey scales the sheer wall of the building towards the rooftop.
Well, that's that. Now if Doc... Hey, he's gone. He managed to cut out, even with his eyes covered with web fluid. But I can always track him down, so long as my little Spidey tracer hangs in there.
The danger averted for the moment, our hero decides it's time for Pete Parker to reappear and heads back into the building to change.
Since modesty impels us to turn away while Spidey changes clothes once more, let's return to the fiendishly fleeing Doc Ock.
14 opens to Ock moving as fast as he can while blinded along the rooftops of the city we know and love towards his secret lab. And you know if Ock is breathing, he's yapping. Does he start monologuing?
He starts monologuing. He starts like this prepared speech about how...
I remember the last time I battled Spider-Man. It seemed that we were both destined for a watery grave.
That was of course the now classic ASM number 33.
The final chapter.
Or
The Only Way Out Is Through. Internal monologue.
Here on Me and My Friend Pete. Ock continues.
But I had underestimated his strength. The strength which saved him.
And we learn how Octopus survived the Golden Liability's property destruction beneath the East River.
Just as my own hydraulic-powered arm saved me by raising me up to an air pocket.
Octopus rises above the water with the aid of the L's and R2 and sends R1 back beneath the surface,
allowing me precious time to grab it for an oxygen tank, which had been part of my basic equipment.
Basic equipment. This man, okay, he called himself the master planner. I'll give it to him. He has a base underwater. What if this base collapses? Gotta have aqualungs just sitting around everywhere. And he did. So he grabbed one. Suited and booted with the aqualung, Ock made his move.
And enabling me to make my way into the same tunnel as the one which Spider-Man had escaped through just seconds earlier.
He watched Spidey escape, and you know he wasn't happy about it.
I still remember my uncontrollable rage at learning that my most hated enemy had also escaped.
14 opens to the villain breaking the surface of the water, ripping the mask from his face, letting all his woes go.
All my months of planning, of struggling, destroyed because of Spider-Man. Just when victory was within my grasp, just when the greatest crime of all time was about to be executed, he turned my triumph into a total disaster. But he'll pay for it. No matter how long it takes, he'll pay with his life.
I imagine Ock is so pissed because he's staring at a bunch of his unconscious goons on the platform above his head. Because if you recall, Spidey came out of this same hole, then got into a one-on-everyone with the Master Planners, that's Doc Ock's alter ego, gang. The flashback comes to an end, and we find Dr. Octopus has made it to his secret base, and immediately gotten sciencey, mixing a bunch of different chemicals into flask and beakers to dissolve the web fluid on his face as he continues shouting.
Selling the nullifier to a hostile nation would have given me enough money to build an empire of crime even greater than before. But once again, the masked Warcrawler has shattered my plans to ashes. At last, the web fluid is beginning to dissolve.
Mans was going to sell state secrets and technology to a hostile nation. He is going full-on chameleon right now. But I love that he doesn't create anything that dissolves the greatest invention on Earth. It dissolved on its own. Ock, taking credit for this in a way that makes no sense, shouts in triumph, and his excitement has his L2 arm knock the hidden tracer from his hip. He picks it up, examining it in the next panel.
It's some sort of miniature transmitter in the shape of a spider. It can only mean one thing. He planted a tracer on me so that he could track me down. But there still may be time for me to turn the tables.
Those turntables, baby. Those turntables. They finna turn again.
And speaking of table turning, who'd ever suspect that the weary-looking youth approaching Professor Warren had been the world's most famous web-slinger just seconds before?
Honestly, who could suspect? Anybody who was with him saw him disappear and now he's popped back up. Those people could suspect. But I digress. It's comic books. I'm letting it go. I'm coming on. As Gwen puts her head down all the way stretched out beside Professor Warren, Pete comes walking up, his hand on his forehead, the lies itching to work their way out of his mouth as he thinks.
Okay, Parker, let's go. It's time to give another Academy Award-winning performance. I'll make up the script as I go along.
My man is going to freestyle. And he does. Pete starts lying.
As soon as I saw what was happening, I ran out to find a camera. If only I could have found one, I'd have been able to... Hey!
Gwen, happy to see him, throws her arms around his neck, all smiles, staring into his big browns.
It doesn't matter where you were, Pete, as long as you're back. I never realized you were so habit-forming, man-child, like being hooked on pistachio nuts.
That's what she
Gwen's
says.
got good taste. Pistachio nuts are my favorite.
nuts.
You're gonna love my nuts. Either way, Warren says they should be leaving, that the two are making him feel too old. So dip, old fella. Don't hate on young love. On 16, back in Warren's front three-seater, Pete looks at Gwen for newfound appreciation. His thoughts back on the track.
She's the only girl who's never asked me for any explanations.
So she's the only girl who's ignored all of his red flags. That's what he's really thinking. While Gwen and Warren have their own ideas about a one, Spider-Man.
It's a shame you missed Spider-Man, Pete. He was simply wonderful. If only his identity could be exposed. What a subject he'd be for a psychological study. Imagine learning what motivates such a man. Is it altruism or deep-rooted schizophrenia? I'll bet he's even an enigma to himself.
Anyone else seen the pattern? Young people tend to love Spidey. Older people tend to think he must be crazy to risk his life helping others, putting himself between the people and the danger. There's an altruism to youth that draws most of them to thinking the King of Swing ain't all bad. And we tend to, as people, become more conservative in our thoughts and actions the older we get. So it always rings true to me that someone like a J. Jonah and Warren right now would think there's something wrong with a person like Spider-Man helping because they can, as opposed to young and idealistic people like a Gwen Stacy and even a Flash Thompson who think that's what a person is supposed to do. I think it's what you're supposed to do.
You're pontificating.
I was passing the time on the drive because...
Minutes later.
We're outside of the Coffee Bean. Love the signage above the entrance. A coffee bean in a beatnik sunglasses and French beret with paintbrushes X beneath them. And beneath this...
Abandon all hope, all ye who enter here.
This is a reference to Dante's Divine Comedy, the inscription above the gates of hell. So it feels wickedly out of place, but maybe the Coffee Bean knows something we don't. Either way, Pete and Gwen say goodbye to Professor Warren and head inside. And I'm convinced the Central Perk from Friends ripped off this coffee shop's whole vibe. It's a below ground floor establishment. It's got the 70 coffee pots that brew in the top half of the container and pour from a spout in the bottom. It's got couches, it's got tables, it's got the guitar Phoebe buffet we'll someday use mounted on the wall.
Oh no.
And I'm sure it's got a dude named Gunther, or something close, secretly in love with Mary Jane. Pete and Gwen enter the scene in the background, while in the foreground, we find ESU's cool kids kicking it. That's the king of the Foolsville faithful, Flash Thompson, still in dress blues, stage right sitting, a macchiato cups loop in his right forefinger, staring stage left at the one and only Mary Jane Watson, her red hair flowing down her shoulders in a purple, black, and orange mod skirt, looking more flawless than a word written in cursive. And Harry Nose in the Air Osborne, his seat turned backwards, his waves on Hurricane, cashmere sweater over goldenrod shirt. Gwen shouts it's the Parker fan club, and it's now in session. But to be fair, I feel like 2 out of 3 of the people sitting there right now don't really mess with Pete, so weird thing to say, Gwen. Either way, MJ says there's just enough room for 2 more soulmates. You know she's always on hippie time. Flash and Harry stand, very gentlemanly. A woman's entered the room after all, and Flash is all sorts of confused. He asks why is Gwen with puny Parker? Did she lose a bet? Gwen says they've got their guru, she's got hers. While MJ chimes in that she's only loaned Pete to the lady, Harry stands here like he's been sucking on a lemon, a look that doesn't go unnoticed by Pete.
What's Harry so stony-faced about? Is he jealous of Gwen and me?
No, Pete, he thinks you're a major league flake, the beginning of a bad reputation Pete's going to start learning to live with. It's one thing to be a superhero when you're the least popular kid in school and nobody sees or cares when you disappear. It's another thing to be a part of a friend group and have them think you can't be counted on. I was recently called a flake. I feel your pain, Pete. The balance is difficult. How will he deal? That's a thought for another time. Right now, the aunties have entered the building. May Parker's on scene, Anna Watson's on scene, the former in a pink wool overcoat, the latter in a golden brown sequin. Both of them are smiling as they walk up. May says she thought she saw Pete coming here, and Anna chimes in that they've just placed an ad in today's newspaper.
We thought of the most delightful way to make some extra pin money. Since Anna has an extra room in her house, we're going to take in a boarder.
The ad?
Room for rent, comfortably furnished, light and pleasant, suitable for retired lady or gentleman. Call after 5 p.m. weekdays.
So Anna's putting MJ's room up for rent. If you know me, you know I hate a landlord with a passion, but May's renting out a room. It's not exactly the same, and I love me some Aunt May. Either way, Pete puts his arm around his favorite gal, all smiles.
It's a great idea, Aunt May, but be careful whom you accept here.
Anna says they're only going to accept the finest references. Gwen quipping adds,
I wonder if Conrad Hilton started this way.
And
quoted from Wikipedia.
Conrad Nicholson Hilton, December 25th, 1887 to January 3rd, 1979, was an American hotel tycoon and politician who founded the Hilton Hotels chain. From 1912 to 1916, Hilton was a Republican representative and the first New Mexico legislator, but became disillusioned with the inside deals of politics. In 1919, he purchased his first hotel, the Mobley Hotel in Cisco, Texas, for $40,000, equivalent to $702,956 in 2023, and subsequently capitalized on the oil boom. The rooms were rented out in 8-hour shifts. He continued to buy and sell hotels and eventually established the world's first international hotel chain. When he died in 1979, he left the bulk of his estate to the Conrad N. Hilton Foundation. In my teenage years, his descendant Paris Hilton dominated MTV, Fox, VH1, and anywhere else where youth culture was present, fooling the entire world into believing she was a ditzy blonde, when in reality she's become, as a GED recipient, an American media personality, businesswoman, children's rights activist, socialite, model, singer, actress, and DJ. If you haven't seen it, check out her recent viral video of her addressing Congress and the code switching she does between kind of, oh my god, to, let's get down to business. It's inspiring. Either way, we press on.
Thanks, Wikipedia.
On 17, Pete uses my ramblings about the Hiltons to wrap his arms around May and Anna's shoulders and walk them out of the coffee bean, escorting them home. Harry, finally smiling and being shady to boot, says it's no skin off his nose, and you know Flash is ready to join in.
Even when no one's around, he's one fella too many.
MJ says one tiger's as good as another, as long as they're male. She's fronting like she's not mad that Pete's going, but Gwen, like us, calls BS. She says she thinks the lady does protest too much.
Gwen is out here reading the classics and quoting them as well. Shout outs to Willie Shakes.
And shout out to my homie Millie who got me Julius Caesar, my favorite William Shakespeare play, in this beautifully brown-bound book. It's beautiful to look at. It's on my bookshelf. I'm super excited. I've already started reading it again. I read Julius Caesar once, at least once a year. Shout out to Julius, my little brother, aka Caesar. I'm getting sidetracked, but you gotta know. Once again, shout outs to Willie Shakes. That's my dog.
But before our little saga turns into a swinging soap opera,
I think it's too late for that.
Let's see what's shaking in the diabolical digs of dastardly Doc Ock.
Okay, narrator alliteration going crazy. We're outside of a shanty shack on the Parker docks. The sun's finally set on a city we know and love, and midnight blue paints the scene. Inside, Otto Octavius paints the walls with his words.
Fortunately, I was one of the world's most competent atomic scientists before I turned my titanic talents to the cause of total villainy. Thus, It is mere child's play for me to find a way to employ Spider-Man's electronic tracer against him.
We move into the shack and find a secret lair more advanced than Zordon's in Angel Grove. Round monitors, switches and dials from floor to ceiling. What looks like a giant 8-track machine because Octopus needs to bump his Kanye. He's on his feet, all his arms working away on the seat in front of him, hard at work as he continues.
All I need to do is construct a makeshift replica of myself, setting it in front of a dummy control panel. The sheer simplicity of this trap will make it virtually escape-proof.
Nothing in this room is real. He's taken all this time to set up a fake lair with a fake Dr. Octopus. Because when he steps away from the console, we see he's a master wax figure creator to go along with his mastery of atomic science. Sitting at the console, it's back to us, a perfect replica of Dr. Octopus, 4 metallic arms and all. Look, everyone's got a hobby. I get it. I spend my days reading about nuts like him. Who am I to judge? A clenched fist, Octopus continues.
There, everything is ready and waiting for the arrival of my doomed arch foe. There can be no doubt that he will arrive, since I have taken the precaution of placing his own spider tracer exactly where I want it.
And where'd he leave the tracer? On the arm of the chair where he set up his mannequin. The trap set, he gets Ghost.
And before the night gets very much older,
our hero, web swinging over the city, gives the game away as usual.
Oh man, Mrs. Watson sent me back at home, and it gave me the perfect excuse to duck out of the coffee bean. So now I'm free as a bird to take off after that multi-armed misfit. I just gotta pick up my tracer signal, and then... Zowie!
Safe to say, the golden liability's got a hit. On 18, Spidey continues his hunt, his Spidey sense growing stronger, leading him to the East River, because and those pesky Parker dots until...
I'm beginning to sense something already. There's no mistaking it. The impulses are coming from that waterfront shack.
Just for the sake of our story, we're going to say Spidey's miniaturized his spider tracer tracker because he still hasn't tuned it into his spider sense. To my knowledge, I'm always a little bit confused at this point if he's already managed to take his spider tracer and tune it to his spider sense's frequency. We know it can be done, right? Chameleon did it, Dr. Doom did it, and of course Pete figures it out eventually, but I'm never quite sure when he actually does. And on my reading, it doesn't explicitly say it. So I know I'm rambling, but let's just say right now he's miniaturized the device, and let's say it kind of like it vibrates and gets stronger the closer he gets to his tracer. Just for now. Spidey shouts that he'll crash into the shack, but his spider sense often, okay, sometimes for the sake of the story, Faithful, begins rattling around his skull as he approaches a dingy looking shack. The closer he gets to it, the more his spider sense vibrates.
It can only mean a trap!
And finally deciding it's probably not the smartest idea to keep screaming on the wind, lands on the tin roof of the shack, peels apart one of the shingles like paper, and peers in thinking.
I better see what's swinging in there before I fumble the ball. Well, what do you know?
He spots what he believes to be Octopus hard at work, but his spider sense still ringing, he refuses to make a move. On 19, still inspecting the room, he notices his tracer.
Hey, wait a minute. How did it get onto that chair? That little gizmo hasn't yet learned to crawl.
This is the Mark I tracer. Those legs are only cosmetic. So, Spidey spins a web ball from his left shooter into his right hand, his thoughts, full metal jacket.
It can't do any harm to take a few precautions. I use a simple web ball as a makeshift mine detector.
And in the next panel, his feet on either side of the hole in the wall he's created, he crafts a makeshift slingshot for his ball, his mind racing.
As soon as I let her go, I'll dive for cover and see what happens. It's mighty suspicious that the doc hasn't even moved a muscle yet.
And let's fly with his signature shout of Geronimo! If anyone's wondering why people shout Geronimo, there are 3 different ideas of how the famous Native American's name became synonymous with meeting danger head on, but I'm going to share my favorite.
Quoted from Wikipedia.
Medicine Bluffs at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, where Geronimo was jailed as a prisoner of war, and his grave is located, are steep cliffs and have come to be known as Geronimo's Bluff. Tall tales were told about Geronimo while at Fort Sill. It was said that one day Geronimo, with the army in hot pursuit, made a leap on horseback down an almost vertical cliff, a feat that the posse could not duplicate. The legend continues that in the midst of this jump to freedom, he gave out the blood-curdling cry of Geronimo! When in reality, the source of the tale is expected to have come from a famous incident called McCulloch's Leap. Sure, let's give it to McCulloch. Catch me if you can and remember my name! I imagine that's what he was thinking. The web ball shoots into the room, and as soon as it touches the control panel, the whole shack goes up in a fiery explosion!
Meanwhile, within the safety of his real hideout, Doc Ock fiendishly gloats, albeit prematurely.
His fist clenched, his display showing the blast. Ock is smiling with all 32 teeth.
I've done it at last. I've destroyed Spider-Man, finally beyond any doubt.
But the man has no time to waste.
But now I've got to find a safer hiding place. After my abortive attempt to steal the nullifier, every federal agent in the country will be searching for me.
G-Man on his ass, he's got to make moves, and packing an accordion briefcase, he throws on a new green cloak from who knows where, and heads towards the door.
Thus, I must find a place of sanctuary, so innocent appearing, so much above suspicion, that no one would ever think that Dr. Octopus might be hidden there. Having finally destroyed my greatest enemy, I can afford to lie low and bide my time. But we know differently, don't we, web spinners?
We do! And Spidey does too. Racing along a rooftop of the docks, fire and smoke raging behind him, Spidey is on the move.
If not for my spider sense, I'd be kaput by now. Just like that spooky six-star killer will be once I catch up with him.
Perched on the sheer wall of a building in the next panel, he makes a solemn vow.
Wherever he is, sooner or later, I'll find him.
Beneath this arrow caption box, we see where Dr. Octopus has gotten off to. His bow haircut combed straighter than John Lennon's in the 60s, he's traded out his Kanye shades for a pair of normal glasses with black frames and white temples. He's thrown a powder blue ascot on under his green cloak. He's holding an olive fedora in his right hand like he's just removed it from his head, and a newspaper's classified section in his left, while he rizzes up none other than May Parker, who is standing here, her own right hand raised delicately towards her smiling face as she looks at the good doctor who's come to ask her about her room for rent. If you're worried, you know I have to ask if you recall. If you recall, May was taken hostage by Dr. Octopus way back in ASM's very first annual
Spider-Man versus the Sinister Six.
Or
Ain't No Punchlines to Fist Flying 2, a year and some change.
But because of Otto Octavius being a doctor and because he was completely polite and courteous to her the whole time, May went through the entire experience oblivious to the fact that she was kidnapped, despite what Betty Brant was telling her. So I'm going to go ahead and assume she's happy to see the man again. Imagine he gets this room. Of course he's going to get this room. And we're out. Finally, the return of 008. Great fight this issue, but I'm willing to bet anything when Spidey finds out the man sleeping in the same house as Aunt May, all hell is gonna break loose from the walls. I think we should take note right now also of Harry's attitude towards Pete. I hope it resolves, but in a world where friends can turn to enemies and your best friend's pops is the Green Goblin, yeah, I'd say pay more attention to the side eyes. Art and story were great. Loving the poncho, loving the return of Flash Thompson, and you know I love Pete's aura spilling Riz all over Gwen and MJ. Maybe. Either way, that's the main episode this week. And that's true. That's the main episode, but there is more Me and My Friend Pete available for your listening pleasure right now. If you sign up to become a patron at patreon.com/HSPP. Patrons have a vault filled with bonus episodes covering stories from all over the multiverse of comic book universes. Next bonus episode, we're outside of the big two, adrift in the sea of comic book universes again, in search of great stories. The choices, up now on patreon.com/HSPP, voted for by the High Council, are Radiant Red Volume 1 Number 5, Heist Movie Meets Super Suit and Superpower, Ian Fleming's James Bond 007 for King and Country Volume 1 Number 5, Everything You'd Expect from the Goat Spy, Sex, Murder, Mayhem, and International Plots, Nightclub Volume 1 Number 6, The Final Stand of the Teenage Vampires, and If It Ain't a Wild One to Be Sure. Or continuing the story of 8 Billion Genies Volume 1 Number 2, as time ticks on in a world filled with wishes being granted. You can't lose. Power to the patrons. If you don't choose to board our crazy train, our Season 3 bonus episodes are available to non-patrons for a one-time payment of $5. And next Amazing Spider-Man? Guess who's coming to dinner? And judging from the title,
The Tentacles and the Trap.
the man's bringing more than complimentary wine. We expect to see you there. The panel of the week can be found at patreon.com/HSPP, free of charge. You know I can't draw. I didn't draw it. Follow us on Instagram at MNMFP_podcast. You got questions? Send them to me@gmail.com. We got answers. All that said, that's all that said. Please like, please comment, please share, please take care, and please think of the world and be true to yourself. That dusty trails are calling, so there's no use stalling. Do you know the tagline? My people with great power. You already know the rest. Make sure you're being responsible. I'm out of here.